Hello, anybody out there? Wow, Chelsea, one person is definitely enough. Looks like it's just you and me. I'm sure a couple of more will join us soon enough. So, I hope you're doing well. It's the sky is just brightening, starting to brighten up outside. I'm sure you guys are getting ready for bed, I guess. Um, anyway, so Chelsea, it's just you and me. Let's get going. So we're gonna jump into the February letters. Kathy B, good to see you. But let's first just take a quick look at this recent article. It's really from a couple of days ago. What's just happened now? It says Musée d'Orsay, that's in Paris, breaks attendance records with interactive Vincent van Gogh exhibition. So, Van Gogh is still the star of the show. He's still arguably the world's most popular artist, arguably the world's most famous artist, arguably the world's most valuable artist. If you guys want to read this article, here it is in chat. Okay, come to me. Come. Cornelia, good to see you. Lisa, good to see you. Good to see all of you guys. Okay, so yeah, so this article basically just reminds us of what a powerful figure Van Gogh is, and still a fresh artistic face, if you will, calling to us from more than 130 years ago. It says here, um, the Musée d'Orsay in Paris announced that its latest Van Gogh exhibition, which used immersive technology to explore the last chapters of the painter's life, and that's also what we're doing. We exploring the last chapters of his life through his last letters, has broken attendance records with almost 800,000 visitors over about 4 months. So about 200,000 visitors a month, right? It says here, Van Gogh in Auvers-sur-Oise, the final months, which wrapped up on February 4th, displayed works from the end of Van Gogh's career when he lived in the town of Auvers-sur-Oise. As you guys know, I've spent about a week there myself. He moved there in May 1890, and he created 74 paintings and 33 drawings before he died that July. That's around about 100 artworks in 70 days. It's pretty incredible. So it says, in addition to showcasing the artist's paintings, the exhibition encouraged visitors to engage with Van Gogh's artwork through interactive experiences. And what's just happened? And then there's also references to, did I see? Anyway, they talk about AI. Van Gogh said, I would implore this, cling to life. Even in the bleakest of moments, there's always beauty and hope. Anyway, so it's quite an interesting article. You guys can check it out. I did want to look at this little part. Mel Stiller has joined us as well. Welcome, Mel. We are going to be jumping into this letter from the 7th of February. That could well be a very good title for today's video. That Van Gogh lately shows signs of mental distress. So basically, after over a month of basically getting his act together again, he kind of has a relapse. There's a regression, right? So if you guys want to follow, that's the link. Jody, also, thanks for joining us. Must say these earphones, which I got from Delta when I flew Delta, they really do a great job at blocking out noise. I can barely hear myself speak when I've got them on. Before we really kind of get going with that letter, I really want to show you guys something. You may have seen it already. It's just a little clip from Instagram. Where is it? But it just shows the ability of Van Gogh's art to be animatable, if that's a word. Just wondering if I can find it here. Send myself so many emails. Is it this one? I think it's this one. Just look how beautiful this animation is of the night cafe and kind of. I'm just going to turn the volume off. Look at the stars above it. But can you see how Van Gogh's art does really feel uniquely animatable, because it's got so much energy already in the paintings. There seems to be already a lot of movement in his pictures. Pretty incredible, isn't it? Alf, thanks for joining us. Alf said, I saw that on Twitter. It is really beautiful. Mel says it's kinetic. Yeah, I mean, and so you do get a sense from his own art that it is vivid, that it is almost visceral, that it is sort of electric, that there's an energy flowing through it. And isn't there? I mean, even the way he paints is extremely sort of physical and activated. It's kind of excited. There seems to be energy. He seems to be transferring energy from himself to the canvas. And that's in a way what makes his art distinctive, is his art feels full of life. It really does seem like you seeing life captured in paint on these canvases. And I've said this before, it almost is as if I kind of get the feeling the technique he developed, those kind of energy lines, or the very sort of vivid dots and lines. I wonder whether that didn't happen by happenstance, where because he was painting outdoors and because the mistral was making his canvas vibrate, when he put his brush against the canvas, it kind of went like that. So even if he wasn't trying to make those little lines, well, the mistral would have helped create a situation like that. So it's almost as though the environment was also part um, of the mechanism of Van Gogh's paintings. It does seem like that, and I must say, Loving Vincent really captures that very well as well. I just want to see if there's another one that I also had. I can't really access Instagram on this computer. I know I did send it to some of you guys. I don't know if I'm going to be able to find it here very quickly. I thought I did email that to myself as well. Let me just try Instagram quickly. I'm not going to be able to access it. I don't know if Chelsea, could you maybe email me that link, if you don't mind, if you have some the resources to do that. Anyway, in the meantime, we're gonna go to this letter. We are now in February 1889, so we're starting to draw kind of parallel with his timeline, just in terms of the time of the year, in terms of our timeline. And we're going to get through February pretty quickly. I think by the end of this live, we'll be in March. It's not going to be as long as it usually is. So this is an unusual letter. It's from Reverend Salles to Theo, and he writes the following. Dear Sir, your brother, whom we had believed more or less cured, and who had taken up his usual work once more, has again lately shown signs of mental distress. For 3 days he has imagined that he is being poisoned. So he is coming across paranoid and imagining things, and is seeing nothing but poisoners and poisoned people everywhere. And so one wonders what this is all about. Did he just, is he having some kind of mental psychosis? Is he hallucinating? Is this due to illness, or is this due to intoxication, or both? The cleaning woman who looks after him with a certain devotion, noticing his more than abnormal state, considered her duty to report it, and the neighbors brought it to the attention of the central commissioner. Now, you can imagine if Van Gogh is acting in this way on the 7th of February, could he not have acted in a similar way in front of Gauguin? In other words, irrational, unhinged, kind of crazy. And didn't that cause Gauguin, who's a fairly reactionary fellow, to lash out? To basically at the same time say, I've had enough of you. You're a crazy guy. I'm not living with you anymore. But that's the one side of him making that decision. But when things really got out of hand, did he not lash out at Van Gogh? He certainly had the tools to do so. Okay, so let's continue with the letter. The cleaning woman who looks after him, so she noticed this. Then this man put your brother under surveillance. And it seems like almost it was a policeman. The police started spying on him, and this afternoon had him driven to the hospital, where he has been placed in an isolation cell. So quite a huge setback, right? Would you agree? It's quite a lot of intrigue taking place. I've just seen him, and his state made a very painful impression on me. He has withdrawn into absolute muteness, hides himself under his bed covers, and sometimes cries without uttering a word. Now, doesn't this give you, this is, how can I put it? This is a third, this is not Van Gogh giving his own assessment of himself. And I've said before, he's kind of a martyr figure. He doesn't feel sorry for himself. He doesn't seem to self-pity very much. And this seems to show that you have somebody else, a third party, that's the word I'm looking for. You have a third party that is seeing things not only as they are, but reveals things to be really disturbing. It appears that Van Gogh is going through a very low point, is in a terrible hole, right? Is going through significant adversity, none of which is hinted at in his letters to Theo. His letters to Theo are very rational, are very practical, are very positive, very optimistic. But you can also understand Vincent kind of needs to put up a brave face to his benefactor, to the guy who's got to give him money, right? Do you think it would work if he wrote letters to Theo saying, um, I'm going crazy, I'm struggling to tell the difference between what's real and what's not. Um, I'm um, I'm seeing things, right? Let's say he is seeing things and he knows he's seeing things. Does it make sense that he tells his brother that? Because his brother will probably react in one of two ways, if not both. The one is he'll stop sending his brother money, and secondly, he'll recall his brother. Vincent is where he is based on his brother's charity, right? And it's not just that. Theo is Vincent's brother, and his brother is basically his guardian, his caretaker. And if it seems to Theo that Vincent is not able to function, then the whole art adventure, like Gabby and Brian, the whole van life adventure stops. I'm not giving you money to do this when it's obviously not good for you, when you're not healthy and you're not safe and it's not a good situation. And so that is why Van Gogh is basically not telling the truth about the reality of his situation. If he does, will Theo keep supporting him? I'm not saying Theo won't support him, just that I don't think Theo will think that art should remain the priority. Do you agree with that? Do you agree with that, Tim? Hmm? Shouldn't say the priority. Okay. Okay, let's go back to this letter. So he goes on to say, so he's mute, he's withdrawn, he's hiding under the bed covers, he's crying. It sounds like he's in total despair, right? So a lot of that seems to speak of mental a mental breakdown. Today, according to the cleaning woman, he has refused all food all day yesterday and this morning. He has spoken little, and at times his behavior has frightened this poor woman. Now, again, if his behavior could frighten a woman, couldn't it also upset a man like Organ, who told me that while he was in this state, she could not continue to look after him? So, even she is like, I'm done. I'm not dealing with this, right? I'm not going to put up with this guy. And I think it's a combination of things. I think it's partly syphilis, possibly even neurosyphilis. I think it's partly the strain of what has happened to him and just trying to go back to normal without having actually recovered. And also, he's mentally struggling to and emotionally struggling to deal with what's happened to him. He's been abandoned by his friend, he's struggling with money, the landlord wants to kick him out. And I can tell you, just in that one sense, if you're about to lose your home and you don't have any control over that, your landlord is going to decide whether you stay or go. That alone can be devastating. I've been in that position quite often in my life. I've lived for a couple of weeks, couple of months here and there, and it's a horrible situation to be in. You're trying to get some momentum in your life. You're trying to kind of put down roots, and then at the whim of somebody else, you no longer stay somewhere, and then the next place the same thing, and then at the whim of somebody else, you got to move on. And I must say, my work exploded only when I was able to stay in two locations essentially for a 5-year period and a 7-year period. Before that, it was kind of chaotic. You work, you about to get somewhere, about to develop momentum, and then you turfed out. And sometimes it's economics, sometimes it's, as I say, just the whims of your landlord. And sometimes you have to leave yourself because of whatever circumstances changing. And so that's part of Van Gogh's reality, is his feeling this place that has been such a source of joy and hope and optimism is now going to be taken from him against his will. And that has got to be teeth grindingly agonizing and excruciating. And that's what I think is a big source of what he's feeling. Do you guys agree with that? I mean, Iceland, good to see you here. What can be more distressing than losing your home, than losing, you know, like Maslow's hierarchy of needs? Well, what is at the very bottom of that pyramid, right? What's at the very bottom of that pyramid? Let's have a quick look. Can you guys see that? What's at the bottom of that pyramid is it's physiological, so it's things like breathing, food, water, sex, sleep, homeostasis, excretion. But basically, the basics. And then one level above that is safety. So security of body, employment, resources, health, property. And so Van Gogh doesn't really have either of these. He doesn't really have, in a sense, he doesn't even really have enough food. He's not sleeping very well. He doesn't really even have his health. The next level, he doesn't really have employment. He never really was employed. He doesn't have resources. He doesn't have family around him. He doesn't have health. He doesn't have property. So at the very bottom of this pyramid, this is not there. And if you even go higher up, love and belonging, does he really have that? He has love from his brother. That's kind of it. He had a little bit of belonging for a short while from Gauguin, but then it was gone. Sexual intimacy maybe with the occasional prostitute, but not really. What do the rest of his family think of him, right? Can you guys see that? And then esteem, well, that's something he comes up himself. And it's quite crazy that Van Gogh builds this part of the pyramid with this part basically missing, right? And look at that creativity, acceptance of facts, that self-actualization. That's the part that he's actually fueling, but there's nothing here to fuel it in a way. He's fueling it totally just out of his own spirit, out of his own life force, his own confidence. And it says here, esteem, respect of others, respect by others. He doesn't actually have that. He doesn't really have the respect of other people, except maybe his brother. One man that respects him. And then a sense of his own self-esteem, which isn't arrogant, it's not proud, it's simply a little bit of belief in himself. And that is what builds basically this pyramid. There's nothing really here. Does that make sense? Okay. You can see in a situation like that, it's unsustainable. You know, if you have a Maslow's pyramid of needs and you're trying to get to self-actualization, if the things at the bottom aren't there, it's quite hard to sustain. Helena, welcome. Thanks for joining us. Okay. Let's go on with the letter. What are we to do now? After I met with the bursar, the intern, and Dr. Deloy, it was decided that I would write to you to get your opinion. Obviously, it is necessary that your brother is put under constant supervision, and also receive the special care that can only be given to him in a nursing home or by the family. Now, this has got to be a shock to Theo. Um, this is kind of proof that Vincent can't take care of himself. Do you agree with that? This is a third party independently reaching out to Theo, a little bit like Organ, basically saying, I'm washing my hands from this guy, get me out of here. And basically saying this guy needs some kind of specialist care because something serious is wrong here. And that is a secret that Vincent's actually been keeping for a while. But here's the problem: he cannot remain in the hospital. Um, he would only be cared for poorly there, although they have agreed to keep him for several days more. Tell me if you want to have him close to you, or at least in a home located in the neighborhood of the capital. So they're basically saying he can't stay in this hospital either. This is an unsustainable situation. He can't stay here, and basically he can't stay alone in his home. Can you do you want him to come to you? Are you going to take care of him, or we could keep him in um, some other kind of, just trying to think what the word, what's the word for a small, basically a hospice. There's maybe a hospice nearby that could um, deal with the situation. Then he says, in this case, the cleaning woman would get a permit for Paris, her husband being an employee at the train station, and she would gladly accompany him. So they're really trying to put him on a train, get him out of the town. And I mean, they even say here, he can be located in a home in the neighborhood of the capital. So they're trying to get him out of out of town. And that is what would happen a little bit later. Vincent would literally be kicked out of all. In any case, it is necessary to make a quick decision, and we will only act after having received your answer. I regret, sir, having to give you such distressing news. Be assured that I will do everything in my power to ease your brother's situation the entire time that he is locked up in the hospital. Tonight I saw that a fire was lit in his cell, for it felt very cold to me, and that someone keeps it going all night. We will see tomorrow if we can install him in a better room. My very cordial greetings, and believe me, your devoted in Christ Salles. And so one does wonder, was this Reverend Salles a truly a good guy? Was he someone who the townsfolk um, found as a representative, of their gripes? Was he a well-meaning guy, or what's the whole story around him? So yes, just a little bit of additional background. Um, I thought it would be here. Isn't there a reference to Dr. Salles in this? It's interesting that in this particular article, it refers to Dr. Ray, Dr. Ray, Dr. Ray, and the person writing this letter isn't Dr. Ray. There's no reference to Dr. Ray. Instead, it's the Reverend. Don't you find that quite interesting? Anyway, let's continue. Let's go to the next letter, written 10 days later from Vincent. And now let's hear what he's got to say for himself. So 10 days go by. That's quite a long period of silence. And presumably Van Gogh has now turned some kind of corner. And then this is what he says. My dear Theo, I've been so completely out of sorts mentally that it would have been useless to try to write an answer to your kind letter. So there is an admission, and is saying it's kind of mental. I'm feeling mentally, something's going wrong with my mind, right? He doesn't deny it. Today I've just come home provisionally, I hope for good. I feel quite normal. I feel quite normal so often, and really I should think that if what I'm suffering from is only a disease, particular to this place, I must wait here quietly till it is over, even if it returns, and let's say that it won't. So he seems to feel like he's suffering from a mental disease, and that is, after all, what neurosyphilis is. And it seems to hit him in phases and stages, seems to come and go. He says at the moment he's feeling quite normal, and he thinks that the way to treat it is to wait quietly till it is over. And in a way, he's right. That is the way to treat it, to be calm, to rest, and to recover. Then he says, but this is what I told Monsieur Ray once and for all. If sooner or later it is desirable that I go to A, as has already been suggested, I consent beforehand and I will submit to it. So I think he's already kind of accepting that he may need to leave the Yellow House, right? Terry Dean, good to see you. Sharon Drury, good to see you as well. No, it's not Reverend Ray Salles. It's Dr. Ray. Let's just have a look. I don't think it's Reverend Ray Salles. Let me just make sure for you. Timmy, stop snoring. Not really much information about him. I've got his name as Reverend Salles, Frederick Salles. So that's his name, Frederick Salles. And it does kind of acknowledge here in this article that he was a mysterious fellow. Right? It says here, a mysterious man. He appeared when Vincent went to the old hospital for the first time. After that, he took care of Vincent, helped him to move. And this is, I think, quite interesting. His letters to Theo are quite cold. And you can feel that he resented the fact that Theo wouldn't take his brother with him in Paris. So I don't know, I kind of get a sense that Reverend Salles may have been a kind of representative of the people in all, not like just a compassionate guy. Bear in mind, Van Gogh has kind of lost his contacts in all. The postman Roulin has left. Gauguin has left. You don't really hear anything from his artist friends. And so now he's got to rely on the charity of strangers. We do know that the townsfolk wanted to get rid of him, and they did succeed ultimately. Is it very rainy in California? I know it has been raining there quite a lot. Lamtoon, good to see you as well. Also quite short notice. Okay, so let's go back to the letter to his brother. And he goes on to say, but in my character as a painter, by the way, if you want to follow with me, here's a link to this letter. He says, but in my character as a painter and a workman, it is not permissible for anyone, not even you or a doctor, to take such a step without warning me and consulting me about it. So he says here, if you want me to go somewhere, that's cool. I will do it and I consent, but you must warn me first. It's a little bit like saying, obviously, if I don't own this property, you can ask me to leave, but at least give me notice. At least give me a month's notice or 2 months' notice. You're duty bound to extend me that courtesy, right? And so again, he's speaking in like a lawyer, is basically saying, it's okay if you want to get rid of me, but if you do, please just do it kind of in the right way. He goes on to say, also because since up until now, I've always kept a comparative presence of mind in my work. Isn't that true? He has pretty much showed himself to be fairly stable, fairly reliable, fairly sensible. And so he's making the argument, I should have the right to say, or at least to have an opinion on whether it would be better to keep my studio here or to move to A altogether. And you can see that is his great fear. He's worried about losing his studio, right? That's his nightmare. That is what he's anxious about. Just as Gabby was worried about the van life thing coming to a grinding halt, which it also did. I actually read recently that her and Brian's plan was to pick what was it? It wasn't strawberries. Pick something in Oregon, melons or something. Aysen, can you remember that? They were going to go to a farm and they were going to pick something. Was it watermelons or? Sorry, I know this is going slightly off track. A pumpkin farm. They plan to work on an Oregon pumpkin farm. Pumpkins, that's it. And so, but anyway, that was what they wanted. They wanted that journey to continue, especially Gabby. Van Gogh wants his little artistic adventure to continue, and he feels like he needs to keep the studio. He's put so much into it. Then he says, this is so as to avoid the expenses and loss of moving as much as possible and not to do it except in case of absolute necessity. Again, this is quite clever. He's basically saying keeping the house will be cheaper than moving. And that's certainly true over the short term, isn't it? Then he says, it seems that people here have some superstition that makes them afraid of painting. And there is an admission that the people are starting to basically gang up against Van Gogh. The people are starting to turn against him. The people are starting to gossip behind his back. The people are starting to plot. And he says, and that they have been talking about it in the town. Now, I've kind of been in the same situation. I stay in a complex, and there's definitely a lot of politics that takes place here. There's people that are on this person's side, and people are on that person's side, and gossip going on all the time. And I've actually been, since I've stayed here, I've been um, the recipient of threats that they're going to get rid of my dog, that they're going to get rid of me as well. Um, Basically, over bickering over uh, trees and just the sort of nonsense that goes on in these complexes. I'm not a problem neighbor. Like, I don't make a noise. I don't complain about other people. If anything, it's a bit like Van Gogh. There's this strange person that we never see. We're not quite sure what he does, so let's get rid of him. That seems to be the attitude. Um, I don't like participate in the meetings and all the things that are going on. I'm kind of in my own little world, and so I guess some people see that as um, uh, I don't know, what you don't know can hurt you, kind of thing. And so in the beginning, I took a lot of this stuff um, sort of where very nice, even if people aren't being nice to you. I took, so for example, if I installed an air conditioner, I'd later get a letter saying, like, just if you don't move the air conditioner, we will move it, and you will pay for it. Only for them to apologize afterwards. Oh, sorry, we didn't. Sorry, our mistake. That's happened quite a few times. Just like a threatening letter out of nowhere, and then, oh, sorry about that. Sorry. Um, and I've kind of taken that all with grace over and over and over again. And then when they started cutting trees down and then saying, but like, it's very patronizing. They'll cut down a tree and then say, oh, sorry, it's a mistake. Sorry about that. And then do it again. They're basically just treating you like an imbecile. And when they started doing it to me, I basically said, look, I've got nothing against you doing it, but the next time you do it, just tell me, um, right? And then they say, no, don't worry, no, we will tell you, and then they do it again. So they basically treat you with a lot of disrespect. And I've been told to my face, look, you don't own the property you stay in, so you've got no say whatsoever. And I've been told to my face, you're a nothing here. You don't have any say. You're a nothing. And I don't know how you can't respond to that kind of statement. Any person being told that by any other person without getting pretty uncomfortable and perhaps even angry, right? And after I was told, like, you're a nothing, and we are going to get rid of your dog, I basically, that's when I reached my limit, and that's where I basically was like, this is not going to continue anymore. I'm not going to be threatened anymore. And this is all comes from so crazy. I'm a true crime creator, and it's about truth and justice and honesty. Meanwhile, my own neighbors are lying to me about who complained about what, and who did this, and why they did that. And anyway, I basically just reached a point where I said, sorry, you're just not going to be threatening me ever again. You're just not going to threaten me again, kind of thing. And they haven't. It has stopped. But I'm just saying it can be very traumatic to be in a situation like that where um, people around you, they don't quite know who you are or what's going on with you. They don't try and find out, and then they do whatever suits them, and then within their own little community, they basically scheme and lie about what they are actually doing. And it's so simple. If I'm very upset that a tree is growing in front of a light, why don't you just come to me and say, your tree is growing in front of my light, it's really bothering me. Okay, well, let me cut the branches away from the light, and then we can sort it out. Or uh, how about if I buy an outside light for you, then you can solve the problem. You don't need to cut the tree down, just put another light there. I'm just giving you this as an example of how um, a small little thing like this can mentally undermine you, because people just it's like, if you just were honest and said, this is what's bothering me, okay, well, then I can sort it out. But if you lie about the thing that's bothering you, then it just becomes lots of lies. And then when someone gets upset, like, why aren't you just telling me the truth, then we can sort it out? Oh, you getting upset, why are you getting upset? You know what I mean? It's just a totally weird way of dealing with it, right? So yeah, and that is exactly what it is. And so you've got these folks who are in positions of power that totally abuse their power. And of course, anyway, this is about Van Gogh. He is in a very, very vulnerable situation, right? And guess what's going to happen? He's going to be the big loser in this. He is going to lose his home. He is going to be outnumbered by the plotters, and he's going to be in this very vulnerable situation. He's going to be taken advantage of, and so here he's trying to defend himself. He's saying, "You can get rid of me, but please just give me a bit of a warning. Please just use the right protocols, right?" Um, Anyway, and in the same way that he understates what happened between him and Gauguin, he understates what's happening with the townsfolk. He says the people here have some suspicion, superstition, that makes them afraid of painting, and that they've been talking about it in the town. It's actually a lot worse than that. They are plotting against him. He's making it sound, he's minimizing it to Theo to make it sound like, yeah, something is going on. It's not really a big deal. Actually, it is a very big deal. Then he says, very good. I know it is the same thing in Arabia, but nevertheless, we have loads of painters in Africa, haven't we? Which shows that with a little firmness, you can modify these prejudices, at least as far as painting, in spite of it, is concerned. He goes on to say, the unfortunate thing is that I'm rather inclined to be affected by the beliefs of others. And I feel the same. You do ultimately end up being affected by the beliefs of others. This one gentleman that I had a bit of a disagreement with said something like, I'm amused by how eccentric you are. Just extremely insulting thing to say to somebody. He said other things that I won't repeat here, but besides threatening to get rid of my dog and much worse things that I'm not even going to mention here, that does affect you, really does affect you, right? And like I don't, I suppose one's got to take more of an interest in what people say and think. This particular person I'm talking about, his garden, he doesn't have a single, I think he's got plastic grass as a garden. So this is someone who has absolutely no interest in nature and seems to think his mission on earth is to chop down trees and cut down trees. Otherwise, maybe he'll be driven out of the planet Earth, because nature is like on the running amok. And if he doesn't chop down trees, like the vines are going to make their way into his home and strangle him, right? So, like I say, he's got like plastic grass in his home, And anyway, it cut down a tree I planted after it had grown for 2 years. And I said, Jeepers, I've been waiting for 2 years for this tree to create shade, and now you've just cut it down. And he said, I don't understand. How have you waited for a tree to grow? And also he said, I don't understand, when did you water this tree? And like, I don't. And well, that's somebody who has plastic grass, right? And I'm not saying any of this, nothing recently has happened. I'm not triggered, I'm not angry. I'm just trying to give you guys a little bit of context to being affected by other people, just to have a different approach to you. But then they're also quite unreasonable in how they execute their approach. Basically, if I have enough people around me that have the same insane attitude, then that's okay. It doesn't matter if what I'm doing isn't right. If there are enough people in my gang, then I can do what I want, because you're nothing. Morally, no. Ethically, no. But in a political sense, yes, I guess you can. So anyway, he says, and to feel them myself, I cannot always laugh at whatever foundation of truth there may be in their absurdity. And so he's saying, I'm struggling a little bit to keep my good humor. I'm struggling a little bit to stay on an even keel. I'm struggling with this. And so I don't know how you would feel. Imagine if you were living somewhere, you're paying your rent, you don't complain, you don't make a noise, you basically a good citizen. And I'm not saying Van Gogh was blameless. I think he probably did womanize, he did get drunk, he did approach women to paint them, right? So I'm not trying to say that he's a completely innocent person in this, but I think the flip side is I don't think that good people of all are completely innocent either. I think that they were scheming and plotting and gossiping. And, it's basically just there's a Dutch dude living amongst them that seems to not be, he seems like a beggar in a way. He seems like a smelly guy. He seems to be almost like the Gary Oliver of Boulder. You've got the Vincent van Gogh of all, minus the deviance, let's put it that way. Van Gogh, I think, was a little bit deviant in that he had a sexual appetite. I don't think it was a deviant sexual appetite, but he certainly did have a sexual appetite. Otherwise, he wouldn't have gotten syphilis to the extent that he did get it. But it's also certainly not innocent what the people of all were doing. Especially if you've got a reverend who's saying, I'm trying to take care of this guy. No. I'm trying to get rid of him so that I can have a more comfortable day. Thank you very much. Thanks a lot, Trinity. Thank you. And so you've literally got a whole town that are treating this guy like scum. And let me put myself onto full screen. I couldn't help going to all, right? I went to all in person myself. I walked through all. I went to a movie when I was there. I spent a couple of days there. And I couldn't help thinking, what a bunch of hypocrites. Meaning, when Van Gogh lived in all, especially this period now, they threw him out. They were trying to get rid of him, right? And they succeeded. They got rid of him and put him into one of the worst places he could have been in, that you could possibly put him in. Like, what I'm saying is, he's just had a near-death experience. He's far from home. He's very vulnerable health-wise. His mental health is vulnerable, but you're still going to kick him out of his home. it's because you don't give a shit about this person. And you might say all of that actually does make sense. You know, he was misbehaving, whatever. Well, guess what happens? 50 years later, the biggest hero in all is Vincent van Gogh, and this is where he painted this, and this is where he did that, and isn't it incredible? And let's say, and basically all today, if you visit all today, pretty much Vincent van Gogh is basically stamped all over as like the most famous tourist attraction of all. The hero of all is Vincent van Gogh. Meanwhile, when he actually lived there, they treated him like absolute shit. That's why I say, what a bunch of hypocrites. And that's not so different to Auvers-sur-Oise. In Auvers-sur-Oise, when he stays there at the Revue Inn, the family there are fond of him. So it seems like the people who actually get to know him, like him, respect him, and are comfortable with him, right? Similar to the postman here, Roulon, the people who kind of know him like him. The people who sort of see him but don't know him and don't try and get to know him, they kind of get this these funny ideas in their minds. I don't understand what's going on here. There's got to be something wrong. This guy must be a criminal. This guy must be a devil. This guy's dangerous to our society. Let's get rid of him. And so even in Auvers, he wasn't really treated that well. He argued a little bit with the Dr. Gachet. There were youths in that town that kind of made fun of him, openly made fun of him. And pretty much everywhere he went, he did struggle to get people just to sit out and say, okay, you can paint me, right? But I mean, the biggest thing was when Van Gogh died, the church in Auvers didn't want him to be remembered because of apparently the way that he died. They didn't want him buried in a particular cemetery because of apparently the way that he died. And so he was treated as a scandal and in a shameful way at the time. But then when you go there 100 years later, he's the biggest hero. And Van Gogh painted over here and he painted over there, and it's so incredible. Well, at the time, he was treated like scum. At the time when he was alive, a lot of the locals treated him like scum. And that's exactly what Jody says. It is a collective lack of compassion. And so no wonder his life ended in tragedy. He was surrounded by people who thought the worst of him. No wonder his life, you know, they say it takes a village to raise a child. I think it also takes a village to destroy a man. Do you agree? So he goes on to say, as I've already been staying here for more than a year and have heard almost all the ill that could be spoken of myself. Now, let's kind of put our true crime hats on for a moment. Who could be the possible seed for this ill will? Because suddenly in February, the penny has dropped and the people want him out. And I mean, Van Gogh is more harmless than ever. He's a hospital patient, for goodness sake. I mean, how could he be any kind of threat or safety issue for anybody when he's a hospital patient? I mean, if you know, and them saying he can't be treated here, that's kind of like discrimination. Why can't he can't be treated in this hospital? Why not? Isn't that what hospitals are for? And he has been treated so far in the hospital, right? And so the question arises, what is the source of the gossip? And isn't the answer Gauguin? Didn't Gauguin tell stories about Van Gogh that basically exonerate himself but leave Van Gogh in his own hometown with a community that is now what's the word, turned against him. I don't think Van Gogh did any favors giving his severed ear to a prostitute. Goodness knows what she would have said about that. I don't think that was particularly helpful. And maybe that prostitute was someone who had slept with Gauguin, and that was his way of saying, thanks for this. You know, you did this, thanks for this. That she was going to tell Gauguin about it or something. Mel says, because they believed Vincent had done that, the church had no intention of burying him. Yeah, but today he is a big hero in Orvez. And I'm pretty sure that they wished that he had been buried in their churchyard for the tourists. Yvonne, good to see you here. Hope you're doing well. So he's saying, you know, I've stayed here for more than a year, and suddenly there's a heck of a lot of bad words about me circling, rumors, gossip. After a year, I've lived here for about a year, and suddenly people are saying horrible things about me. Where did that come from? Well, wasn't it Gauguin? Wasn't that Gauguin's parting shot? This guy's crazy. This guy is going to explode. He says, Gauguin and painting in general, why shouldn't I take things as they come and wait for the upshot here? To what place, you know, so look at the juxtaposition here. I've been staying here for more than a year and I've heard almost all the ill that could be spoken of myself, and then Gauguin. The advantages I have here are what Reveille used to say, they are a sickly lot, all of them. So at least I do not feel alone. So that is his kind of assessment of his community, right? He calls them a sickly lot, all of them. Thanks a lot, Alf. Thank you. Appreciate it. And so, I don't know, it's in a way quite strange how Van Gogh is both treated as this hero, as this incredible tourist attraction. This is where he painted this. This is where he painted that. I mean, these are actual banners that come out of the ground and show you all the spots where he painted. Anywhere where he did something is a little placard, right? And you don't just find it in all. When you go to Saint-Remy, it's all along the road. He painted this vineyard over here. He painted those olive groves over there. He painted this rock over here. He crossed the road over here. That's Saint-Remy. Then when you go to Orvez, then it is he painted this road over here. He painted this garden over here. Okay, and so when he actually lived there, who gave a shit about any of that? Oh, here he comes again. Quick, let's go inside the house. I'm just saying it's total hypocrisy. But now that we can make money out of him, let's do that. But the other thing is, it's even the story is still a lie. You know, he was this mad artist. He was troubled. He gave his life for his art. Okay, well, how much of those troubles did you give him? How much of the difficulties he went through are because of you, right? Right? But now that we can make money out of it, and I mean, I'm one of thousands, hundreds of thousands of tourists coming from around the world, not to visit Orvez, but to visit Van Gogh's journey through Orvez, not to visit Arles, but to visit Van Gogh's journey through Arles, not to visit Saint-Remy, but to visit to retrace Van Gogh's journey through those places, right? And they there with open arms saying, okay, over here and over here, that's where he went, and over there, and do you want to come and stay at this Airbnb or stay at this hotel? It's very close to where the yellow house was. This is very close to the asylum. You can be very close to where, but none of you were very close to him when he actually lived here. I'm just saying it's total hypocrisy. And because of this hypocrisy, the story of his life is also hypocrisy. It's you're not really making much of an effort to tell that story. Now, I've just been, I know this is not a true crime channel, but this is a bit of a true crime element to his story now. Are the efforts of the villagers ethical? Are the efforts of the villagers altruistic, or are they just thinking about themselves? Are they kind of doing a Lord of the Flies thing in the island of All? Suddenly seeing ghosts and goblins in their fellow human beings when it's just a guy who's trying to paint. For God's sake, he's just trying to paint. Maybe you can help him paint. No. What's going on here is really weird. We need him out of our town completely. We'll celebrate him 100 years after he's died. Then we'll understand what an important painter he was, kind of thing. But I mean, it's all about money. Now that we can make money out of him, let's make money out of him and tell whatever story. Who cares what the story is? But while I was writing a script on John Bonet, and there's almost a similar thing. Nobody actually cares about John Bonet. The stories about John Bonet, right? But who actually knows who that little girl actually was? What her preferences were? What her fears were? Everyone says, I think John Bonet was killed in the basement, but John Bonet feared the basement. If someone said, I'm going to take you to the basement, she probably would have screamed. Why didn't she? Because she wasn't taken to the basement in that way. But the point being, does anyone make the effort to try and get to know this person that we're talking about? Let's actually try and put ourselves aside and our prejudices aside and our own filters aside and see the person just for who they are. Is that so hard to do? In my case, someone might say, I don't understand why trees are so important to you. Like, why is a tree so important to you? And I could say, they're not that important to me. If you want to chop it down, but don't lie to me about it. But tell me why have you planted so many trees? What's going on? And there's quite a long answer to that, but the short answer is I've had quite a rootless existence. I've lived all over the world. I've lived over here for 3 weeks, over there for 5 weeks, over there for 2 months, over there for 6 months, over there for 8 months, over there for a year. I've lived all over South Africa. I've lived in South Korea. We also lived in different places. I lived in the UK, Edinburgh, Bristol, London, Maidenhead, but also moving constantly. And so when you've done that for a long enough period, and that's exactly what Van Gogh did. He also lived over there, and then over there, and then over there, and then over there. And sometimes he wants to stay on, but he can't. Sometimes he should stay on, but he moves because of the journey that he's on. But at a certain point, you want to put down roots and you want to start building your life and anchoring yourself to something. And he does this with the yellow house, right? He does this with choosing it, painting it, decorating it, dreaming about it, selling it to this other painter who does arrive. But basically, it becomes an anchor. And how traumatic that must be to lose that anchor, to have that anchor that you put so much of your own metal into it, mettle, that ends up being lost. The anchor's just broken and it's lost, right? And so if you ask me, why did you plant all these things? It's because I wanted in some psychological way, I wanted a sense of being rooted to somewhere. After living, 20 years, 30 years, where you're constantly moving around, you don't have a constant job, you're a freelancer. Like Van Gogh, he was a freelancer as well. And you want to be rooted, connected, anchored in some way. And then someone comes along and I'm just going to cut this tree down because it's got no point to me. Maybe it's got a point to you, but you're a nothing here. So the trees are nothing here. Why do you want to get upset about a tree? And so, if you don't want to make any effort to know someone's journey, you don't want to make any effort. Also, why are you getting so upset about a dog? Well, the difference is you in your house live with your wife and whoever. My dog is, in a way, my family. So my dog means quite a lot to me, right? But by the same token, oh, I know how to control you. You have an attachment with a dog. I see you walking your dog all the time. To control you to get what we want, we'll threaten you with a dog. Just so dark and nasty and ugly. It's an ugly way to treat people. I'm going to pull your strings in order to get what I want because I understand all too well what I want out of the situation. I couldn't give a shit what you want or who you are. I have absolutely no interest in who you are as a person or what your story is as a person. I've got absolutely no interest. The only interest I've got is what way I can use the strings that I have at my disposal to pull you where I need you to go. It's a horrible way to treat people, but it's all within the rules of a complex, all within the rules of a community, isn't it? Right? And so this is the agitating situation that he finds himself in. He is now at the mercy of others. And I'm sorry to say, but he's about to go into a very, very horrible holocaust of his life. If Van Gogh did cut off his ear, then sending him to the asylum, and let's for the sake of argument say Van Gogh did cut off his ear, and Van Gogh did take his own life. And let's say you could say to the people of all, by the way, 2 years from now, less than 2 years from now, he's going to take his own life. How do you feel about kicking him out of the town with that in mind? They probably say, I don't really care. He's not our problem. Just get him out of here. But then 130 years later, we need to know everything about Van Gogh because we need to print out pamphlets. And we need a little Van Gogh route here. Didn't he walk over here? So we care about him in death. We care a little bit about who he was after he's dead, now that we can make some money out of who he is. I just say it's just total hypocrisy. And so when he says they're a sickly lot, that is absolutely true. But in another way, you can kind of not blame people for being the way they are. People, there's a saying in Afrikaans, soort soek soort, which means sort searches for sort, or basically birds of a feather flock together. And so in any situation where someone appears different, they are excluded or whatever. And that doesn't play very well in today's diverse culture and society. But it certainly was pretty much the rule of thumb in lots of parts of France and Europe in 1890. Anyway, let's go on. So he says here, then, as you well know, I am so fond of all, though Gorgan is uncommonly good reason to call it the dirtiest town in the whole south. And so Gorgan really didn't like all. I don't know why he says dirtiest. I don't know whether he means the people are dirty-minded or dirty-hearted. I mean, just after saying they are a sickly lot, he says Gauguin called the town the dirtiest town in the whole South. Not quite sure what he means by that. I don't know whether he means literally dirty, that they don't take care of the town, that it is, there are leaves on the streets. I'm not quite sure what he means. But Gauguin, he says, has uncommonly good reason to call it that. Anyway, he says, I've already met with such friendliness from my neighbors, from Monsieur Ray, and from everyone at the hospital besides, that really I would rather be always ill here than forget the kindness there is in the very people who have, and there he says, people who have the most incredible prejudices against painters and painting, or at any rate, no clear, sane idea of it as we have. I don't think the prejudice really is against painters. I think it is against foreigners to some extent. I think it's someone who isn't ostensibly very wealthy, so a poor foreigner. I think the modern parlance would be immigrants. How do you feel about immigrants? How does somebody else feel about immigrants? How do you feel about an immigrant that just doesn't have any money but is painting a lot? I don't really care that you're painting. Do I want you here? Yes or no? But anyway, that's basically how he feels. But at the same time, he's saying he's experienced incredible kindness from the people that he's been rubbing shoulders with directly. The people that are more on the periphery seem to hate his guts and don't want him to be there. He goes on to say, I'm not quite sure what he means. Maybe it's both. Maybe. Thanks, Al. Anyway, they say then they know me at the hospital, and if it comes on again, nothing would be said, and they would know what to do at the hospital. I have no desire at all to be treated by the doctors, nor is there any necessity. So Vincent's basically saying, 10 days after the letter, saying he needs to be in hospital, but not this hospital, he's saying, but they know me at this hospital. And he also says they would know what to do at this hospital. And then he also says, I have no desire to be treated by other doctors. So why must I go to another hospital? And isn't he right? They do know him. They do know what to do. And why must he now introduce himself to completely different doctors? Why? Why must he do that? Yeah, I think that is part of the story. Then he says, the only thing I should like to be able to do is go on earning with my hands what I spend. Koning wrote to me a very nice letter saying that he and a friend would probably be coming south to me for a long time. It was in reply to a letter I wrote to him some days ago. So this is where he's in a little bit of a fairy tale. His world is literally collapsing around him. The walls of the townsfolk are sort of going up against him. It's like a fortress, and he's going to be locked out. Meanwhile, he still has this little fairy tale in his mind. Maybe this little project could continue. It's a little bit like Gabby after the Moab incident, thinking maybe things are going to improve from here. Maybe when we in Grand Tetons, that's going to be nice. Then he says, I do not dare persuade painters to come here after what has happened to me. They run the risk of losing their wits like me. The same applies to Dehaan and Isaacson. So can you see what he's actually saying here is he's losing his wits essentially because of the horrible people that are around him. Because he's been treated in this is being undermined in this nasty way by these two-faced people, is basically saying that it's caused him to um, lose his wits. Then anyway, he says, mother and sister have also written. The latter was terribly distressed about the patient she was nursing. At home, they are very, very glad about your marriage. And so there again, the art experts say Vincent was very distressed. This is why he did what he did. You know what is distressing Vincent? Losing his home. Because of the townspeople, not because of Theo. And then here he says, they're very, very glad of your marriage. Well, isn't he saying that because he feels the same way? Now, mind, you must not think too much about me, nor fret yourself. He's saying, don't worry about me. Things are crappy, but I'll be okay. He says, it'll probably have to take its course, and we cannot change much in our fate by taking precautions. Once more, let us try to resign ourselves to our fate, whatever it is. There again is incredible insight into the resilience of Van Gogh. As bad as things are, he says, you know what? Maybe we should resign ourselves to our fate. And I don't want to give too much about my own personal travails, but I kind of had a similar approach in two aspects to my life. I won't mention the one, but the other one was I thought maybe it'll actually be good for me if I lose my home where it is, because I've been considering moving to America, also moving to some other place. And to me, at this point, if I've got to move from where I am now, and maybe I should, maybe I need to, maybe it'll be good for me, maybe it's necessary. But I've also invested a huge amount in my home. Although I'm renting it, I've installed solar, I've put in 3 air conditioners, I've done a lot of other things, burglar proofing, security, that's cost a lot of money. So to lose that would effectively be losing a lot of that investment as well, just as Van Gogh did. But there's another part of me that says maybe it'll be okay, maybe it's for the best. Maybe that's my fate, right? And I think that does speak of a strong psychological resilience where you're not terrified or anxious or worried. You basically turn a fall into a dive. You turn a wave that's approaching you, a big wave of fear, into something that serves you to somewhere better, right? In other words, instead of, there's a saying, what you resist persists. Instead of resisting something and trying your best to defeat or prevent something, you basically just shrug your shoulders and say, well, you know what? Maybe this is where life wants me to go. Maybe I'll go with it. I'll go with the flow. And maybe it's going to take me somewhere where I'll actually be happier. I mean, what is the point of arguing with all of these people? If they don't like me and they don't want me here, why not just go somewhere else? Maybe it'll be nicer there. Maybe it's better for everyone if I do this. I'm just saying that is a sign of someone who's got emotional maturity, someone who's not mad or unhinged or angry or what's the word? Someone who can't control their emotions. It's someone who is quite mature in how they deal with some of the most horrible things that you can deal with, right? Exactly. So it is that. But the bottom line is, and I'm not telling you this to be self-indulgent, is the house was an extension of Vincent. It was the most that he'd ever put himself into something else. I would love to say that the Yellow House is the longest period that he lived somewhere, but he was kicked out before he could reach that record. The longest period that he lived in one place was actually in Newnan with his parents. I think he stayed in an outhouse, but he said they treated him like he was a dog, a shaggy dog, and he wasn't terribly happy there, and he did try to leave. Of course, then his father died, and he felt duty bound to stay on a bit longer. But after that, one of the places he lived in the longest was the Yellow House. It's certainly the place that he put the most of himself on the line. And to me, I think the part that's easy to miss is it was when he lived in the Yellow House that he really turned a corner as an artist. He started producing things like Starry Night over the Rhone. And I just wonder if I can find that really amazing animation. I think it's this. Yeah, I found it. Can you guys see this? This also just gives you a bit of a sense of Van Gogh's art animated. Pretty incredible, right? Still not the one that I'm trying to show you. There's actually another one. See if I can locate it. I could show it to you instantly if I just had access to my Instagram on this computer, but alas. Can you guys give me? Oh, you sent me the link. I don't. Did you email me the link? Because I just don't see it here. Okay, so can you give me just 2 minutes? I'm just gonna email it from my other computer. I'll see you guys in a moment. Um, I'll just play this while I'm gone. Okay, so this is the link I've been kind of wanting to show you since the beginning. I did email it to myself, I just couldn't find it. You just get a really vivid sense of Van Gogh's world and how fluid it is and how energized it is. Shall we play it one more time? And I must say that little 2 seconds, 1 second of Starry Night over the Rhone, that to me is the best of this little collage. Of course, that is pretty good too. That just think that is done so well. This particular part of it. Anyway, you just get a sense that, especially of the light, the way that the light kind of throbs and glows, right? You really get a sense of energy, of pulsating energy, don't you? I also think when it depicts grass, you get that rippling effect because he uses all of those dots. It does seem like there's this sort of static, sparking, vibrating energy that is moving through um, his paintings, moving through what he saw in front of him. He was trying to put that onto the canvas, and doesn't he succeed? Melstiller says, "Oh wow, I'm in the painting." Okay, Mo Rama says, "I just got my book from Amazon. That's awesome news. Please read it. Please review it. Please let us know what you think." I do think, and many of you, I'm sure, will agree. I think that's my best book cover of all the book covers I've done. That's, I think, actually by far the best. It's a beautiful book cover, and it needed to be in order to honor the artist. I felt like I needed to put effort into that book cover, not just a picture of his face and a title, but make some effort. Okay, so let's go back to the letter. So he says, our sister wrote that your fiance had just been staying some time at home. That is good. Well, I send my love with all my heart, and don't let's lose courage. So, nowhere does he say anything negative about his fiancée. He says that is good. He doesn't say anything bad about it. He doesn't say, are you sure? He doesn't say, can you afford to get married or whatever. Then he says, believe me, ever yours, Vincent, address next letter to Plus Lamartine. Kind regards to Gauguin. I hope he's going to write me. I shall write him too. And I think only like 4 or 5 letters are in the entire month of February. This is possibly the penultimate one. 22 February, 26 February, and then we into March. So I'm only going to deal with the 22nd of February. We'll deal with the 26th of February next week, I think, just to try and keep the timeline relatively similar. So this is going to be a fairly short live, probably not more than 2 hours. I'm pretty sure it's quite late where you guys are anyway. So anyway, 22nd February, about 5 days after his last letter. My dear Theo, many thanks for your kind letter and for the 50 franc note that it contained. Are you tolerably well? And is the weather in Paris bearable? So it's around about the same time of the year as it is now. It can get still get quite cold in the northern hemisphere around now, and then from March it starts slowly thawing, slowly getting warmer. I must say over here it's very hot still. At night it's starting to get a little bit cooler. Then he gives a weather report. He says, we have days of sun and wind here. I walk a lot to get fresh air. So far, I'm sleeping and eating at the hospital. So, again, does this sound like a totally mad, unhinged, witless worm? Or does it sound like someone who is having a couple of setbacks? He goes for walks. He's managing to sleep, and he eats at the hospital. Yesterday and today I began to work. So it seems like he's resumed working, but of course there are going to be more setbacks to come. When Mademoiselle Roland also left to go and live temporarily with her mother in the country, she took La Barqueuse with her. I had the study of it and 2 repetitions. She had a good eye and took the best. Only I'm doing it again at the moment, and I do not want it to be inferior. So he's very caught up in this particular image, and he has described it as one that is intended to give comfort, to give solace. He sort of mentioned that sailors, perhaps from Iceland, alone at sea, cold, surrounded by grey, might have this picture in the galley or somewhere, and it might give them warm feelings and feelings of that anchor them to perhaps a motherly figure. And that was certainly the motive behind this particular picture. Come, Timmy, come, boy. I think Timmy wants to go for a walk. Anyway, he says, in reply to Maurier's letter, which gave me pleasure, if Gauguin wants to make an exchange with you for a copy of La Barqueuse, he can send it to his wife in Denmark, and I should willingly see a canvas of mine going there in this way. But as I've told you already, this canvas may be unintelligible. I should have liked to send something to Holland, but I haven't enough confidence for that yet. So he is acknowledging that his morale has taken a little bit of a hit. Can you see a blade of grass from your new apartment? I hope so. So his brother has possibly spent a little bit more money on upgrading his home. He doesn't say how much does it cost. Are you sure it is the right move? He supports his brother. As for Koning, really, I daren't encourage him to come here too much, even with his inclination to go wild about the Midi, after the experience I have had of it for now. If he goes to Nice, excuse me, where it is perhaps healthier, he is sure to be taken by the gambling crowd because of his good nature. For it is a real plague that even here already, and it warps the character. So he seems to be saying that there's a lot of gambling taking place in this part of France, I guess. He says it warps the character. But if one has too many troubles, what is one to do or say? In short, you see that I do not quite yet know what you think. It's quite a cryptic remark. I don't quite know what to think about what's going on. Bernard also wrote to me. I've not yet been able to answer, for it is so hard to explain the character of the difficulties one may meet with here, and with our habits and ways of thinking in the north or in Paris, it is fatal to stay here long. That's quite a explicit remark. It is fatal to stay here long. In this part of the world, you have to endure things that are no joke. That's also quite a explicit remark. Things are pretty tough here. And he hasn't said this before now, he's been living there for a year, is only kind of acknowledging that now. He says, it must be admitted, however, that in every town there's a school of drawing and a set of collectors. But you realize that, directed as they are by some invalids and idiots, it is only make believe and sham. So, he even thinks of some of the art crowd as idiots. Then he refers to Saul, the Reverend. He says he handed 50 francs over at once. I'm very glad that Gauguin has finished some of the lithographs. So he hardly mentions him at all. He doesn't really discuss or describe much about Reverend Salles, which I think gives you a sense that he doesn't really like him very much. I agree with what you say that if it takes a more serious turn, I must do what the doctors say and not oppose it. And so that is basically an insight into Theo's recommendation, is that, okay, things are fairly concerning. If it gets worse, do what the doctors say. Don't resist, don't argue, just do what they say. And that does seem to be quite sensible, doesn't it? Anyway, he says, but that may be neither tomorrow nor the next day. Well, it won't be tomorrow, the next day, but it's coming up, I think, by April. So he's basically got 2 months before the rest of the year will be determined. And also when it's made clear that, sorry, Vincent, you have this enterprise, this whole yellow house thing, this dream is going to be taken from you. How are you going to deal with that? How are you going to come back from that? How are you going to respond to that? And I think an open question is, by the way, I'm actually wearing the same shirt that Gabby wore, that she got in Zion. I bought the shirt in Zion as well. It just shows you how it kind of affected me, her story. If Van Gogh didn't lose something that meant so much to him, if he didn't lose the yellow house, if he didn't have the trauma of losing his friend, could he have produced Starry Night? Because I'll say again, Starry Night isn't this peaceful picture that many people think it is. It is a restless nighttime analog to a restless mind. But the point I'm trying to make is, can you see that Van Gogh is going through extreme adversities, is very troubled, is very humiliated, is very hurt physically and emotionally and psychologically. He is very much in a place of disgrace. And it's in that context that he paints this triumphant picture that touches so many people around the whole world. So what I'm trying to say is, he isn't painted from a place of safety or stability or calm or health even. He paints it in a place of great peril, where he's actually starting to lose his life, he's starting to lose control, he's starting to lose everything that he's worked towards, he's even starting to lose hope. Within that situation, he paints this incredible portrait of a kind of heavenly disturbia over a peaceful village. And I think that should also give you pause when you find yourself in a place of trouble or trauma that maybe something good is going to come out of it. If you're an artist, maybe a starry night. If you're not an artist, but I think many of you here are artists of a sort, adversity definitely feeds the creative engine, definitely feeds and fosters creative energy. So, as an artist, you should welcome great challenge and great trouble rather than be traumatized by it, right? Because it is taking you, certainly in a psychological area, into a new place and with new colors, if I can put it that way. Another Amy, thanks a lot for that. And of course, a lot of it is how do you respond to that trouble? And Van Gogh's answer was this, in part. His answer was this. And so you can almost see, trouble as like this roller coaster ride, this adventure that you take, and roller coaster rides and adventures have ups and downs. Adventures have highlights and lowlights, and you can't have the one without the other. In fact, the one kind of makes the other. You can't have a highlight if everything is a highlight, really. You've got to have some difficult, if you're climbing a mountain, you don't just step from one summit to another. You start at the bottom to get to the top. And equally, to get to the bottom, you first got to be above the bottom. You've got to be at the top to know how far you're falling, in a way, and know how much it's going to take to get back, right? And so, in a way, one can almost have a global sense, almost like you're a spectator in your own life. Well, this is quite an interesting up and down journey that I'm taking. It's quite interesting that it goes there and then it goes there. Instead of being emotionally invested in, I just want to be happy, or I just want this, or I just want that. That's part of the fun in life, is that things don't always go the way that we think. And in America, I sometimes got lost and I had wonderful little experiences. And sometimes I got lost and I had horrible experiences. But certainly those things that we don't expect help us deal with life. When we always get what we expect, we certainly don't learn anything, we don't grow, we're not tested. And make no mistake, whether you 10 years old, 20 years old, 30 years old, 40, 50, 60, it's never too late to be thrown a curveball and learn how to catch it. It's never too late to experience something unexpected and learn how to deal with it. The longer you in a place where everything is safe and secure and expected, the better the chance you in some kind of comfort zone where you start to stagnate. Even if you're happy, you stagnate in your happiness and it becomes a rut. And you don't become an effective person in your life and on this planet. And I have to say, I think it's something I wrote about quite often when I was writing books. How did it go? I think it's a saying from, it's either Ernest Becker or Joseph Campbell. Maybe you guys can help remind me. It's something to do with an enlightened life enlightens. Someone who's living a life that is authentic, but also that is kind of energized, energizes others around them. I don't know if you guys can remember me writing about that. I'm trying to think of the exact quote. It says something, a certain kind of person, and I think it's IZE in the words. But it's basically, and someone someone that I used to be really good friends with until he died was that kind of person. When you're around this person, um, you feel inspired. You feel like you want to be better. Um, and so when you have someone living a life in a very enlightened way, in a very authentic way, in a very courageous way, in a very inspired way, it doesn't it can't fail but to sorry it can't help but inspire you, right? I wish I could remember the exact saying. I just can't quite remember it. But it is this idea that you are full of positive energy and that inspires others around you. And that you might be someone who is um, fit and healthy and exercising and eating right and motivated. And then when that person crosses your path, you realize what kind of life you could be living. You could be a lot more actualized than you are. And isn't that the word I'm looking for? Um, an actualized person actualizes those around you, around them. Let me just see if I can find that quote. It's either Ernest Becker or Joseph Campbell. Maybe it's Joseph Campbell. Could also be, if you follow your bliss, if you follow your bliss, it sort of encourages others to do the same thing. I'll have to read my own books just to remember what I'm getting at here. It's something like an actualized person actualizes others. You guys follow what I'm getting at? Anyway, I know what I'm trying to say, and I think I've said it. That is coming pretty close to it. It's just a very short thing. It's basically something like he, someone who is actualizes others, and that's basically it in a nutshell. That if you take Vincent van Gogh, he in a way transcended the whole thing, that I need others' approval, that I need to sell an artwork, that I need to have a job, that I need to have a wife. He basically said, there's something I want to say that means a lot, and I'm going to try and do that. And I think that means something. I think there's meaning in me trying to do that. And it turns out there was. And it turns out that the world took a while to get the memo, but when they did, they saw something remarkable and valuable and meaningful, and they still do, which is why you've got things like this exhibit at the Musée d'Orsay breaking attendance records, right? And so basically having the courage to live, especially in a creative way, basically encourages others to do the same thing. In a very simple way, it's like saying, I don't know if you've ever been in that situation, perhaps in high school or at kindergarten or in any group of people where someone has the courage to be themselves. It might be to complain about something. It might be to do something different. It might be to laugh at themselves. It might be to do something silly. Gives you the courage to do the same thing, to not always be completely sensible about everything. Do you know what I mean? Where you can simply just be yourself, where you say, everyone's looking, I need to be perfect, and I need to make sure everything I do is impressive and whatever. But then someone else comes along that says, you know what, I can't keep everybody happy, and so I'll just be myself, and win some, lose some, big whoop kind of thing, right? No one at all. Interesting, Abadar. So anyway, that is where Van Gogh is, but there's a dark side to that, and that is when you live by your wits and you live by the force of your own nature. It's kind of like a double-edged sword. Although that can take you to incredible highs, some of which are almost imaginary. So if you think about the yellow house, it takes Van Gogh into a wonderful place for him, a place where he's anchored, a place where his art starts to spread its wings. He starts to transform as an artist. He starts to fly, essentially. He starts to find his voice. In a way, maybe he doesn't realize how much that is taken out of him, how much courage that took to do that. Because when he loses that, in a way, he loses everything, right? And I was thinking about this, if you translate it to true crime, if you get one person doing true crime, and it can be anything, it can be painting, it can be building a house, it can be raising a family, it can be anything. But let's put it into true crime. If you put yourself on the line and you say, I'm going to try and be an authentic channel, I'm going to be sincere and honest, and I'm going to provide analogies to myself, and I'm going to try and apply this to my own situation, my own culture, and my own family, and my own upbringing, and my own past, and the fabric that I find myself in, and your fabric and my fabric. If I'm going to take it so seriously, right? If I'm going to treat it with such sincerity, then if people don't appreciate that, that is really going to hurt. If people laugh at that or minimize that or don't understand that or don't even want that, if they say, wow, you're really boring. You know, you just everything you do is just so boring. Then it's like, wow, that's what I got for that. Whereas if somebody else deals with these things in a much lighter way, where they say, well, I'm just trying to I'm just trying to express my opinion about this, but you're not putting yourself on the line. And if people like it or reject it, then it's in a way got nothing to do with you, because it's not personal, because it's not something that you put yourself on the line on, right? Can you see that? And so symbolically, and we are symbolic animals. Oh, I've found the answer. I found the answer. Makes me feel so good. Makes me feel so good. I'll put it on screen in a second. Remember I said, I think it's actualized, someone who actualizes themselves um, can actualize others. Well, what I was actually looking for was this. I've found the answer, but it looks like Google can't find it. I think it is from Ernest Becker. It's funny, I can't find it anywhere online, but it certainly is something that he said. Okay, so this is what it is. A vital life vitalizes. Anyone remember me saying that or writing that? A vital life vitalizes. Anyone remember that? And what he's essentially saying is, if you live a real life, if you live a what is another word for vitality? A life that is full of life, a life that is creative, a life that is sort of real. I mean, I can't really say it in another way. Um, a life that is meaningful, a life that is necessary. Let's just have a look at, there we go. A life that is needed.
Vital.
But look at these other sayings: lively, energetic, active, animated. Those are all descriptions for Van Gogh's art, right? And he's putting himself into his art. He's putting that life into his art, but at great cost. You know, it costs him a family, it costs him friends, it costs him people around him, costs him people around him that understand him. He's really lonely. He loses an ear. You know, he goes into an asylum. He doesn't have any money. He is often hungry. He's sick. But what he nevertheless puts into his art is this vitality, this life, this electrified light. And it's what the world needed. The world needed this interpretation, this visceral interpretation of an electrified reality, of these energy fields that we are in, that we are a part of, and that we move through, right? And so I've been trying to like just grasp onto this thought that I know I once had, and just been struggling to come to it. And I knew there was something eyes, something, and then that word repeated. And with enough exposure to the idea, I did manage to grab hold of it again. Um, isn't it incredible? I mean, isn't it incredible just that somewhere in your subconscious, this feeling that resonates, and how well it does resonate. Because look at also the meaning of vitality. Vitality means liveliness, life, energy, animation, spirit, spiritedness, vivacity, exuberance, buoyancy, bounce, vibrancy. And a lot of all of this is almost the opposite to what Van Gogh was feeling. He was feeling the creep of death and sickness and entropy and being trapped and being controlled and being stuck, because I can't live in the house that I've put all these dreams into. I'm now stuck in a cell. I'm going nowhere while this big art fair is taking place, the World Fair in Paris. And he ends up painting a painting that evokes words like sparkle, spark, vigor, fire, zest, passion, the fizz of stars. Even Simon Sharma describes this artist painting with this thick paint, trying to express the relish of life. Meanwhile, is he having such a great life? Um, he's almost at the point furthest from that.
Relish.
Is Van Gogh enjoying, delighting in taking pleasure and glee and rapture and satisfaction in his life right now? No, he is wounded, he is sick, he is struggling. And yet, despite all of that, he paints a painting that does all of these things, that shows life as enjoyable, um, to some extent delicate, to some extent filled with rapture, exhilarating. Isn't that quite amazing? And I mean, it's one thing to think these things and feel these things. It's another thing to express them, and the other person on the other side gets it. So, in the same way, I may, in my mind and in my body and in my heart, I know what I'm trying to say. A vital life vitalizes. Isn't that incredible? That, like, it's almost like one honest person in your orbit, one genuine person in your orbit, one inspired person in your orbit, one person that is in a state of flow in your orbit, one person who's truly authentic, one person who's really living a courageous, creative life. But even just in a very simple sense, one person is just an honest human being, not because they get something, not because it pays their rent, not because they want to win a naughty badge, just because that's who they are. That honesty is just part of them, how they express who they are. And isn't that quite a rare quality? What I'm trying to say is, it's one thing to know that and feel that. It's another to be able to actually find those words, find that voice, find those feelings, and communicate it, and it actually lands on the other end, right? And although I feel like as a writer, that's, although not easy to do, it's doable. It's so much harder, in my opinion, as an artist. And it's the main reason why I stopped drawing and painting. There were things I wanted to say, things I wanted to express, things I wanted to communicate. And I thought, painting a tree is not going to do that. The things I want to say, drawing this house in the mountains just isn't going to be able to express all the things I want to say about that. And although one day I do want to go back to drawing and painting as a way to express certain things, um, I do think it's easier to do that with words, and that is why Starry Night is such an incredible achievement. Is when he achieves that, and what he's saying is almost the direct opposite. It's almost how it's received. Almost feels like it's the opposite of what where he was. He wasn't in a spectacular place in terms of his life. He wasn't in a triumphant, sparkling, um, um, part of his what's the word of his life trajectory wasn't in the sort of sparkling, triumphant position. He was actually at the bottom of the roller coaster. And yet he did produce this sparkling, scintillating view of the world. And maybe the one requires the other. Maybe you need to be in a dark place to see this vivid, vital light. Maybe you need to have come from the top of the mountain. You can't paint the top of the mountain from the top of the mountain. You can only paint it from the bottom, right? No, it was definitely wasn't his last work. It was he painted a year later. He painted 100 pictures and sketches in 70 days in the last 2 months of his life. So I guess what I'm trying to say is, as horrible as this period that he's going through, and that we're going to be going through it over the next every Saturday or Sunday, I want you to think of it in terms of your own life and own experience as maybe it's an important thing to get you where you are going. And most people will say, you know, when you're going through a bad time, a tough patch, you just want that to end. You want that passage to end. And what I want to try and encourage you to do is almost enjoy it, almost pay attention to being in that passage so that you learn so much, because that's when you do learn. You don't learn anything at the top of the mountain, except that you're wasting time and you're putting your life at risk, you know, especially if it's Mount Everest. Whereas there's so much to learn on the climb up and the climb down if you just open yourself to it. And you know, life, it's a well-known saying, life isn't a destination, it's a journey. If you only live when you get to a destination, then 90% of your life is lost. Because if you only come alive when you reach that destination that you're heading towards, then how much do you really lose? And so try and turn your destination into the journey, because Van Gogh painted Starry Night in the middle of his journey, not at the end, not at the beginning, certainly in the middle doldrums period of it, you know, when things were really, really bleak. Okay, let's finish this letter. I managed to go way over 2 hours. Wow. Where is this letter? Okay. I must say I'm pretty gobsmacked at how that saying that just popped into my mind, just how applicable it is. It is so applicable. I hope I remember it to repeat quite often. A vital life vitalizes. So, you know, if you need that vitality, look for someone near you or someone that you know, and take inspiration from them. If you can't find anyone like that, be that person. Be that vital life. Vitalize those around you. Thanks so much, Yvonne. Thanks so much. That's such a great compliment. Anyway, so he says here, it is not uncommon to see even a whole population in these parts seized with panic. as at Nice during the earthquake. Just now the whole town is uneasy, no one rightly knowing why. And I saw in the papers that actually there have been slight earthquake shocks in places not far from here. So I don't know whether there's a bit of a religious kind of panic going on. He says, the more reason then I consider why, as far as I'm concerned, I should wait with as much patience as I can muster, hoping that things will clear up again. At another time, if I were less impressionable, I should probably poke a good deal of fun at what seems to me topsy-turvy and offbeat in the ways of the country. So this is how he's trying to deal with his life and deal with the people around him. He's saying, maybe I must just try and laugh at it. Maybe I must just try and have a sense of humor about it. That's kind of a tough one, because laughing at something may be the worst way to deal with something. But maybe if you're powerless or helpless, then you've got to deal with something in some way. And so maybe that's the way you deal with it. But he's basically saying, maybe I must just laugh at the situation. Where does he end up 1 or 2 months later? In the asylum. But then I think you could also say, okay, what else could he have done? Could he have gone into the yellow house, closed the door, locked it, and sort of gone on a hunger strike? I will not leave. What was he supposed to do? He didn't have any money. He really didn't have too many people to rely on there. Salles was definitely not his pal. In a way, he just doesn't have the social currency. In a situation where the town is going to throw you out, there just isn't enough time. He doesn't have enough money or influence to develop the social currency like that quickly to convince the people around him. It's a fait accompli, right? Anyway, he says there, at present, it doesn't make a particularly funny impression on me. In other words, he's saying, I'm starting to lose my sense of humor. I'm starting to realize that things are really shit. And you don't often see Van Gogh writing in this bleakish way to his brother, right? He is often a glass half full kind of person, certainly in his letters. And the glass is not even half full, it's like got 3 or 4 drops in it. Well, after all, there are so many painters who are cracked in one way or another that little by little I shall be reconciled to it. And by cracked, quite an interesting word. It basically means crazy in a certain way. I understand what Gauguin must suffer from more than ever, for in the tropics he caught the very same thing, this excessive sensitivity. And maybe Van Gogh said something to Gauguin that Gauguin responded to out of excessive sensitivity. Maybe he said, you're not going to leave here. You know how much work I put into this house. You're not going to leave here. Or maybe he said, you're lazy. You're a lazy guy. You don't. How do you expect to get anywhere if you don't work hard? If you don't do more? If you don't try harder? You're a lazy artist. Can you imagine if someone said that to you? I don't know whether you have a strong work ethic or if you respect people who do. But if someone accused me of being lazy, of not doing very much, I would take great exception to that. Wouldn't you? And I wouldn't be surprised if that is something that Gauguin may have reacted to, because you can kind of imagine Van Gogh comes across as a very prolific, hardworking, um, what's it, bones to balls, but just basically this guy that is working himself to the bone. His work ethic compared to Gauguin's is totally different. And so if he criticized Gauguin for being lazy, I wonder how Gauguin may have reacted. In the hospital, I actually saw a mad negress who is staying there and working as a servant. Tell him that. I told you, Reve, that you are so uneasy about me. Sorry, if you told Reve that you are so uneasy about me, he would certainly reassure you by telling you that because there's so much sympathy and community of ideas between us, you feel rather the same way. So yeah, Van Gogh is intuiting, predicting, suspecting that his own brother may be making remarks about Vincent, about his uneasiness. And who can blame him? If you were in Theo's position, if you were Theo, I don't know why this camera is, I'm not really in focus. But if you were in Theo's position, Vincent has lost his ear somehow. Gauguin has fled all. This yellow house that you've financed, not, none of the money was Vincent's. You financed it. That's now basically looks like that's going to be lost because the house is going to be lost. What should you do about your brother? Do you just keep giving him money, or do you start to feel uneasy? You're getting letters from third parties you've never heard of saying he can't stay here. He's not well. He's a problem. What do you do with that? Can you blame Theo for feeling uneasy? And also, if Theo would normally do something, be hands-on, come down to all and sort things out, speak to his brother face to face, things are suddenly totally different. He's got a fiance, right? He's got a fiance now. Is kind of got to think quite a lot about Joe, and he's got to think quite a lot about finances. He can't just make trips willy-nilly. And I had another thought about Van Gogh. He's always been, I don't want to say drama queen because he's not a drama queen, but there's always been drama around his brother. There's always been trouble and difficulty. And so maybe he just thinks, look, I'm just going to suspend action for now. Like I don't know what the solution is, but I'm gonna just play it by ear for a little while. I'm uneasy. I don't know what to do. I will just I'm just going to wait and see. And he's basically said that in this letter. He said over here, if it happens again, I must do as the doctors say. That's basically Theo's response to this. I can't quite see it. You remember we did look at that. Here it is. If it takes, I agree with what you say, if it takes a more serious turn, do what the doctors say. And so that seems to be Theo's position. I'm uneasy. Things are really not looking good. Let's wait and see. And if this happens again, that's, I guess, the answer. Let's not act right now. Let's just take it the next step, which is quite a mature way of dealing with things, not the way Gauguin dealt with things, which is to react, become emotional, do something rash, spend a lot of money, and create a um, a scandal, essentially. And so he's saying, yeah, I can understand you feeling uneasy, but there's a lot of sympathy and community of ideas between us. Doesn't that count for something? And so think about the choice of words. He's basically being ostracized. What a good word, right? He's being ostracized, kicked out of his community, thrown out, becoming a pariah. And he's saying, but Theo, between the two of us, there's a community of ideas. And that's something that's also got to weigh on Theo, is that his brother's reputation, his brother's social standing, social status is virtually at zero in all. He's humiliated. It is the Van Gogh name just doesn't mean too much in all at this point. And he's saying, he's reaching out to another community, saying the community of ideas. And think about that statement and the community of ideas in terms of Van Gogh's art that reaches us today. That whatever he felt when he wrote this letter, what has reached us, what has reached the Museum of Modern Art in Manhattan, New York, and the Musée d'Orsay in Paris. Most of Van Gogh's art is basically in the Netherlands, in Amsterdam, in Paris, and in New York, with maybe a little bit in some London galleries, and also others in the Netherlands. And anyway, this community of ideas, the art that he ends up producing, ends up creating this incredible community of people who love Van Gogh to this day. He creates a community through the spirit of his art, and it creates a community. Look at this community. 23 people talking about his attitude, his vision of the world, and his vision of life. And so you can have that. You can have a community of spirit, thoughts, ideas, attitudes, standards, compared to, which is nevertheless real, compared to a community of people who live in a complex or a town that may, specifically because they don't know who someone is, they don't understand who someone is, they don't make the effort to understand, and so there's not a community there. But that is one of the gifts of the internet, is that you can have, in the same way with art and books, you can have a community of ideas that creates a real community of real people. They're just not connected in a real way in terms of physical distance, but they are connected in terms of shared psychology, shared thoughts, shared attitudes. And that can be more real than actual communities. Isn't that quite a profound thought? Anyway, so he then goes on to say, do not think too much about me as if it were an obsession. Besides, I shall get along better if I know you have peace of mind. Again, just a sense of Van Gogh's resilience, although things really aren't going well. He says, he doesn't say to his brother, I think you need to come and see me. Or, I mean, I think I would have said that. I think you need to come and see me. I'm feeling a little low. I need some support. I need someone to help fight against my opponents here. I need someone to stand up for me. I need a little company or whatever. Instead, he says, don't think too much about me, and I'll be fine as long as I know that you have peace of mind. And then he says, a good handshake, you're very kind to say I could come to Paris So that is something he has suggested to Vincent. It's basically the equivalent to Gabby of come home, come back to Florida. You're very kind to say that, but I think I'm going to keep going. I don't feel ready to throw in the towel on this adventure, right? He says, but I think the excitement of a big town would never do for me. Goodbye for now. Ever yours, Vincent. So his brother has said, if you want to come to Paris, it's fine. Although I am engaged, you can come to Paris. Vincent says, I don't think that's going to work for me. And think about it, the World Fair is going to be in Paris very soon. Would that have been such a bad idea? Would Vincent going to Paris in February, with the World Fair just months away, at this point, would that have been such a bad idea? He could have done it. I do wonder what would have happened to him in terms of his health, because it seems like his health was on a hardwired on like a downward spiral. Would it have gone anywhere except the way that it did go? And so maybe the asylum was the best place. If Vincent was alive now and you could ask him, do you think that was the best decision for you? If you could live your life over, would you have gone to Paris after all or stayed in the asylum? I wonder if he wouldn't have said, the asylum wasn't great, but it was what I needed. And that's why I say the same thing. If your life takes you in a particular direction, maybe it's also what you needed. Okay, and I think that's it. We'll deal with this letter from Reverend Salles, the second one this month, to Theo. We'll deal with that next week, either Saturday or Sunday. Anyway, it's not good news. Your poor brother's been taken into hospital again, but we'll deal with that next time. Again, thanks a lot for joining me here. I'm going to play out with the animation. Thanks a lot for being here. I don't know, I found this quite a invigorating live. I don't know if you did. I hope you guys can take something out of it. Remember, a vital life vitalizes. And so that should encourage you to try and live your life in a vital way. They say we tend not to regret what we do, but what we don't do. Do something that you might regret not doing. And maybe your community needs someone to kind of help wake them up out of their fugue state. Maybe your community could do with some waking up. Here's the definition of a fugue state. Loss of memory, often temporary. Sometimes it's called a dissociative fugue. Maybe some folks in your environment are in that state. Or maybe you are. But anyway, the way to come out of it is to access that vitality, whether it's vitality of thought, vitality of a good way to think about it is courage, that thing that you fear to do, that thing that you feel scared to do, reluctant to do, but is nevertheless on your heart to do it. And it's also like that thing they say, fake it to make it. If you start living a vital life, your life will vitalize itself as you start to rub shoulders with the energies that are released when that happens. Okay, so I think that is it. Chelsea, thank you so much for that. And Deborah in Australia, thank you for that. Let's have a look at some of your comments. Terry says, excellent thought-provoking evening. We did miss some of our members. The Stephanies aren't here, but I'm glad those who are here are here. So thank you. Thanks, Jody, Helena. Humility is a great power. Yvonne says the whole world is in that state. I always love finding people who are not asleep. I must say, I've often felt antidepressants don't help you to deal with life necessarily. I mean, antidepressants have their place, but if you on antidepressants, are you more awake or asleep, right? I hope I'm not offending anyone when I say that. But I've found, have you ever been in a relationship with someone who's on antidepressants? They just seem one layer away from kind of where they need to be. And I think anyone would agree that in order to be fully alive, you don't really want to be on any kind of medication. You don't want to be taking sleeping pills, and that's just one way to transcend whatever the opposite is of vitality. What is the opposite of vitality? I would say it's like almost like sickness or illness. Well, there it is. The opposite of vitality is lethargy, listlessness, sluggishness, kind of being asleep, right? So how do you wake up? Well, it's through finding vitality, finding life, finding light. And in this sense, I think Van Gogh is an incredible inspiration. Isn't that why we at Van Gogh Letters 74? Next week, 75, quite a milestone. Okay, so thanks for being here, everyone. That's certainly what Jalsi's saying there. Jalsi, you were like one of the first people here. What a nice surprise. And here, and still here. Who was the very first person here? Who was the very, very first person here in chat? I wonder if you're still here. Just going through chat. Chelsea, you were the very first person here. Is Kathy B still with us, or has Kathy B left us? And how about Lisa and Cornelia? You guys still here? Malays, yeah. Anyway, it's always a treat having Yvonne with us. I always feel like you almost in a way complete my sentences, so thanks very much. Deborah says I was lucky last. It seems like we did lose some of the people along the way. Maybe they fell asleep. Maybe they used this as ASMR. Anyway, if you're watching this on replay, let me know what you think in the comments. You can also hit the thanks button if this meant something to you. But I'm really going to try and hold on to that. A vital life vitalizes. Isn't it a great expression, and so apt for Vincent van Gogh, because that's exactly what he did. He's still vitalizing today. People look at his art and feel the rush of life in them, don't they? Cornelia says, I'm here and I've loved every minute. What a lovely thing to say. I really appreciate that. Anyway, while I've been sitting here, I've watched the trees fill up with light in the window behind me. The sun is up, and I'm going to start my day. I might go for a swim a little bit later. Thanks, guys. Take care. And I want to put this on full screen. Just get it started. And I'll see you guys next time for the last letter of February, in the last week of February. Thanks a lot for the super chats. Jalsi, thanks. Jalsi and Terry and Sharon, thanks a lot for being here as well. Take care. Have a good sleep. Sweet dreams. and I'll see you guys next time. A vital life vitalizes. Vital art vitalizes.